The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. And I'm excited to talk about this because this is a new offering that we will be providing with Fireteam Whiskey. And I'm so excited to be partnered with Operation Warrior Resolution for the retreats to provide this service as well. So we're going to dive right in and talk all about the Cortina Method, which is so amazing, such a amazing approach to trauma resolution. But first, Michael, can you tell us about your mental health background?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. So very excited to be here. My background, I've worked in pretty much the full continuum of care. So if we look at the most restrictive to the least restrictive, I've worked in settings such as adolescent residential, inpatient units for adults, teenagers, and kiddos. They call it tyke psych. Worked in day treatment programs, independent living programs with inner city youth in Chicago, outpatient settings, EAP, and private practice. So I've worked with everything from mental health, full range, diagnostically, and addictions as well.
Awesome. So obviously, fast forward to now, you're doing something, you're still in kind of the mental health realm, but you're doing something very different than the traditional medical model approaches that both you and I were probably trained in and through, from graduate school on and our careers afterwards. So what was kind of the shift for you? I think we all have this story as medical providers where we kind of shift into this more holistic thinking, or kind of coming away from the traditional medical model. So what was your shift? What was that kind of change catalyst for you?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it was really about, I remember doing outpatient traditional talk therapy, psychotherapy, and not getting, if you looked at the results, the outcomes of outpatient psychotherapy, they're not overwhelmingly impressive. And my practice fell within that realm. I was having some successes, nowhere near as many as I wanted. And when there was success, it took a really long time. And if anybody had experienced some pretty tough things earlier in life, then the process of going through it was grueling. And, we'd go through like rainforest worth of Kleenex in my office. And I just remember wanting something better for the people that I was serving. I wanted something. So interesting story. I was going to pivot and get out of the field altogether. And I got into a completely different industry, went into income property. And over the summer, we acquired a duplex that, from as far as the condition of the duplex, it was a hot mess. It was not really suitable for living. And acquired the duplex. That whole summer, worked on it. And by the end of the summer, it was like this really, it wasn't Taj Mahal, but it was a nice place. It was, you could put people in there in good faith. And I remember seeing the before condition of the duplex, putting some energy and some work into it, and then seeing the after. And I remember wanting that in my clinical work. And so just before I completely got out of the field, I decided to just go outside the box and start researching and studying things they don't really teach you in school, to drive those really three factors: a process that will be much more effective, more efficient, and more gentle for the recipient of the process. And that's what was driving me, just really dissatisfaction with the status quo in terms of what I was trying to do.
Yeah. And that's so that's such a pivotal moment, because I think for us all, we can kind of get stuck in that, well, it is what it is, kind of mindset, and this is just how we do things. And you had that courage to think outside of the box and go, this can't be it. Like, there must be something else. And if there's not something else, you know what? I'm going to figure it out and create something else, right? That's a huge leap of faith that you took.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So you somehow stumbled upon these aspects of what ended up being the Cortina method, which you created. What were some of the things that you found in your kind of exploration and research that you were like, this looks good, and kind of give us an overview of the process by which you kind of came up with this aha, like, this is it. This is the approach that we need to take.
Yeah, so one of the big ones was what's referred to as memory reconsolidation. And that's sort of a big buzzword in the neuroscience community. And when this first came out, it fascinated all the people, the early pioneers, the researchers that were involved in this, and what's happening with the brain and what's happening with memory. And the finding that memory in and of itself is malleable, labile, subject to change, and the implications that this has then for people who are struggling in the mental health and wellness arena. And so, since those early findings, there's been over 1,000 studies on reconsolidation of memory, memory reconsolidation. People in the neuroscience world and the researchers just took off with it. And so there was a lot of evidence base, which was appealing to me, for the change process, the change mechanism that's taking place within the brain as memories are brought back to conscious awareness and then reconsolidated and resaved. And so that was really one of the big driving forces in terms of what I was coming across out there.
Yeah. So this again, this kind of comes away from traditional medical model, which is crazy if you think about it, because we're licensed medical providers of basically the brain, but we're never trained on the brain, right? Which is, I mean, that's the like ludicrous thing about this whole thing. It's like, what? Maybe we should know something about the brain, right? So you taught yourself about the brain.
Absolutely. That's, it's such a great point you're making. That's what happens. It's, one of the notions is this: if we think about event-based versus brain-based. So, I'll be sitting in staffings, multidisciplinary staffings in my previous lifetime, and there'd be a group of therapists and case managers, psychiatrists, nurses, etc., talking about somebody that they're working with and discussing, well, what's going on? She has a lot of anxiety, she's acting out, and so forth. And then inevitably it comes back, well, she was sexually abused from the ages of 5 to 9, and then she experienced a rape when she was 21. And on the discussion goes. Now, the one thing that's clear is that we can do nothing to change events that have already transpired. I mean, events have happened, can't time travel and go back and change an event that has happened. But the entire treatment program for that individual moving forward is based on that foundation, which rocked my world. I'm like, this is shaky. This is shaky at best. Your treatment recommendations, whether it's various types of therapies and medications, are foundationally based on this is what's going on. This is the cause, the source of what's happening with this individual. It was these various abuses that she experienced earlier in life. Versus saying, well, wait a minute, it's the brain. It's the way that the brain has processed and stored and recorded the events that had transpired earlier in life. there's something we could do something about. We can do something about the way the brain processes information. So just that little shift in and of itself is going to shave 10 years off of therapy, because good luck trying to change an event that has already taken place. I haven't had so much success in doing that yet. However, in learning how the brain processes, records, stores, and can reprocess information, that's where it's at.
Yeah, yeah. And I recall in your training that I went through with you to learn this method, you emphasized that, because in traditional talk therapy, we focus so much on the event. We talk about the event. We talk about the feelings with the event. We talk about what happened because of the event. We talk about what happened before, what happened after. It's like blah, 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 we focus so much on the event and our frontal lobe. And we're basically training our brain to keep that connection, keep that file open of the trauma, right? And it's replaying over and over and over. And we keep emphasizing that because we keep talking about it, right? And what I love so much about your approach is that you actually don't even talk about the trauma.
Yes, that's right.
Just mind blowing.
That's right. Yay. That got in. That stuck from the training. I'm so pleased to hear that. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. That's, going over and over it again equates to what I believe is strengthening the neural pathways of stuckness, strengthening the dis-ease, because one goes over it and over it and over it. Not only can it trigger abreaction, the nervous system can get activated, and it can be very unpleasant for the person who's having to be part of this process. But as we know, neurons that fire together wire together. So I believe it's actually strengthening these neural pathways in these approaches. And this is why you will see people in therapy for 7, 10, 12, 20 years. And I've heard this, and I'm an advocate for them. So, I'll speak on this very freely. When I'm hearing from individuals that they're saying that this one visit was more productive and healing than I've heard these specific numbers, 7, 12, and 25 years of therapy, it let me know that I was onto something, and people do not have to continue to suffer for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, just astounding. I mean, it totally makes sense, but I guess we just get stuck in this, this is the way we were trained, and this is how we do things, and this is what we do, right? But you went outside of that box and you're like, hey, let's just talk about how the brain works, right? Maybe that we should start with that, right?
Well, that's what I so appreciate about you and people like yourself, is that this is very different, yet there's people out there that will crack that door open. Other people will say they'll blow the door wide open, but they're interested. They'll check it out, and you'll say, well, let's see what it's about, because you're in it for, you want to see lasting change in people. You want to be a real healing impact on people. So I'm thankful for, because it's way different and than our traditional training. And so I'm thankful for you and people like yourself for diving in.
Yeah. The problem is, though, I will caveat this out there for all the clinicians who want to learn this, which we'll talk about. You will have an opportunity to do that. It's a little too effective. I mean, I can't count how many, in the last 2 months since I've been using this, I think it's been about 2 months or so, maybe a month and a half, that I've been using this with clients, how quickly I terminate therapy with people. It's like, we don't have anything else to talk about. Okay, we're done. It's like, okay. It's like, not that, there's not people lining up. Of course, there's always people ready to be helped out there. So there won't be a lack of people to help out there. But it's a little startling as a therapist, to go from, expecting to be helping this person for a few months down to like, okay, we're down to like two sessions, and we're like, okay, we're terminating therapy now. So, yeah, it's pretty transforming of just like a traditional, clinical practice that a mental health practitioner would be engaging in.
Yeah, great point. And you're spot on that there's the prevalence of trauma is so extraordinarily high that there's absolutely no shortage of people coming in the doors that, those who are trained can take care of. And what's really interesting is when you start doing this, um, it creates a little bit of a buzz. People start to hear about you and they start to talk about, well, what's going on, and I saw this person. Sometimes it's your colleagues. A colleague might send you a referral, and then that individual goes back to their colleague and they're like, what'd you do to him? What'd you do to her? This is like a completely different human sitting across from me. And so then they get interest and they send you more referrals, or the individuals you serve go and talk to their friends, their family, their coworkers. And it really, um you start to be of service to people in a very different way. To your point, it's a much shorter duration, and yet they'll always be need. There'll always be need.
Yeah. Well, quality versus quantity, right?
Right.
If your heart is in the right place, it should be about, the quality, right? That, hey, if you're done in a session, if you're done in a 2-hour session, then great, fantastic. There will always be somebody else to help, after this person. So, so you rolling all this up, you did all the research, you experimented, you took bits and pieces of things that you found that it was effective. You came up, boom, this is the Cortina method. Can you just give us a description of what the Cortina method is?
Sure. So the Cortina method is a brain-based healing methodology to resolve trauma. It's firmly rooted in neuroscience for efficient and effective outcomes, with emphasis on a person not having to relive or re-experience painful emotions. It's about getting the brain updated, optimized, and reprocessed. And when the brain is optimized, it's basically the individual is living life in a way that is so much more enticing and optimal. What it looks like, because a lot of people say, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, it's a talking experiential process whereby the practitioner actually does most of the talking. I mean, we need to hear from our guests in the beginning to get a good, clear sense of what there is to resolve. But at a certain point, that shifts, and it's the practitioner doing about 90% of the talking the remainder of the visit. And so there's experiences that can be described as almost like meditative type experiences. There's actual physicality, there's movement. We now know, it's no secret, that trauma can be stored in the body, and there can be physical manifestations of people's experiences with trauma. So to close out all the loopholes out there, the Cortina method, or TCM, also involves physicality. So there's actual directive, strategic movements happening where we're getting out of the chair. We're not just sitting there and talking for the next hour, out of our chair, and using very strategic movements with focus on resolution and freedom from whatever the person has been captive from for so long.
Yeah. And the emphasis, again, just to reiterate, not actually talking about the trauma experience, and how lovely is it that it's actually, I would describe it as a pleasant visit. Like it's not painful, because I know, like, that first session, it's like, I have a new client today, it's like, the anticipation, that the first visit with your doctor or your therapist, it's like, oh, like, you feel like you're coming in with this, oh, I'm going to have to unload this burden and have to talk through and be so uncomfortable. And I'm going to be crying. Like you said, you went through all this Kleenex in your sessions. It's none of that is happening. It's actually kind of fun.
Thank you for saying that. That's right. It's, I'll share with people that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and get, I'll share with colleagues, other, coaches, counselors, therapists out there. I'll say, yeah, we're going to get, a decade or maybe 2 decades worth of trauma resolved. And we're going to do it in a way that is kind of light and uplifting. We'll likely have some laughs along the way. And they look at me like, have you forgot what trauma is? And I say, listen, I can't make this up, because with people's permission, with their consent, I audio video record my work so that I can use it for trainings. And I'll say, listen, I don't have to make any of this up, because you're going to see it from start to finish play out right in front of you. And they'll see that individual go through it in a lighthearted manner. They'll see some laughter, and they'll see decades of stuff get resolved by the conclusion of the visit. So thank you for mentioning that. That's right. It's which is not only great for the participant, for the guest, for the person receiving the services, but think about, what do we hear from our colleagues all the time in the trauma field? We hear burnout, compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma. For those who are brain-based, we hear mirror neurons, that my brain is firing the same way their brain is firing as I'm listening and taking in all this heaviness. So it's a beautiful thing for practitioners, because your energy gets boosted and you don't feel so drained from working with individuals. It's really uplifting for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a stunning difference, because I mean, any clinician listening out there can, recall probably many times where you're just like, oh, like you're almost traumatized by the session. I mean, I've had to like walk outside and just shake that negative energy out. It's like, oh, like I'm just feel so just heavy and burdened and just dark, and none of that happens. It's actually fun and light, and you're even laughing, in the session. It's really wonderful. It's just you end the session feeling just so fantastic and good. Not only about the service you provided to the guest, but that the guest is, so happy with the results. And what I love about your technique is you do a check-in at the end that the results have actually happened. You make very sure that the results are there at the end. It's not just like, well, hopefully it's stuck. Okay, good luck. You do a check-in.
Oh yeah, there is throughout the visit, and in particular at the end, when I have a sense that what we were looking to get resolved is resolved, we will be very detailed in checking that, because I want to ensure that before they walk out the door that this thing is crystal clean. And then I'll do a follow-up too, after the visit, a few weeks out or so, and just kind of check in and ensure everything is still in tip-top shape and in good order. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, when do we ever do that in traditional therapy?
Yeah. It's kind of like, see you next week. We'll see you next week.
Time's up. Get out.
Right.
I got my next one coming in, and I got to do my notes real quick. I got my next one coming in 10 minutes. There's no checking going on.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's definitely refreshing too. So let's talk about your transition of using this with veterans. I mean, you definitely, intentionally kind of started offering this to veterans and military spouses. So what kind of inspired you to do that, and what was that process, and what you're doing now with Operation Warrior Resolution?
Introducing the new Fireteam Whiskey Fitness and Nutrition app. Everything you need to get fit and lose weight right at your fingertips. Choose from hundreds of fitness videos and fitness plans. Search for workouts by fitness level, equipment available, or body part focus. Choose from several nutrition plans and customize your macros. Your entire fitness, nutrition, and wellness plan all scheduled on your calendar. Text a trainer anytime for tips, tricks, and motivation. Achieve your fitness and health goals with the Fireteam Whiskey app. Go to www.fireteamwhiskey.com to get 2 weeks of results for free.
Yeah. So what had happened was probably about 5 years ago or so. The now CEO of Operation Warrior Resolution. This predates the inception of OWR, Operation Warrior Resolution. Was doing a nationwide search. At the time, she was looking for 3 practitioners to go down to Florida, where they're based out of, and work with veterans in these healing retreats. And fortunately, I was one of those 3 that got tapped on the shoulder back then. And she said, "Hey, heard about your work and seen what you're doing. And what do you think? Would you like to be part of this?" And I said, "Tell me when and where, and I'm there." To me, it's an honor to serve those who've served us. So it was really just a no-brainer for me to I feel grateful and fortunate to have had that opportunity and to bring this to the veteran population, because I have so much gratitude to them. I mean, it's truly because of them that here we are having this conversation. It's because of them. You're breaking bread with somebody, a friend, a family member. It's because of them. And I've just always felt that way. So for me, it was an honor to bring this to the veteran population and their families.
Yeah. So just to, I actually interviewed Kendra. So actually her episode launches this week. So we make sure to check that out. I think it's episode, we say 58. Yeah, episode 58. So definitely listeners, please, go back and listen to that, learn all about that organization. So at these retreats, this is the Cortina Method is provided to these military spouses and veterans who are attending these retreats. And I also I had thought about this earlier. So I want to make sure that we talk about that this isn't just for people who have experienced trauma.
Yeah. Thank you. So the application is really broad. So I've developed protocols to resolve guilt, to take care of physical pain in the body. And I will tell you, people walk in experiencing guilt, they walk out and it's done. They walk in, of course, if they've been experiencing PTSD, they walk out and it's resolved. And with pain, that one is always very interesting because they're thinking, well, where's the medication? This is what there is to do for pain. And I say, yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you any medication. So we're gonna have to do something different here. And I remember one veteran in particular I worked with, he said, yeah, my pain's, right now it's at a 7. I've just accepted that it will never be below 5. By the way, 0 being a complete absence of pain and 10 being you're in the ER. It's about a 7 right now. I've accepted I'll live the rest of my life with it never going below 5. So we go through the process and I check in, as you mentioned, I check in at the end, what do you notice? Where are we at? And he says, what the, drop some words, some language, you're hanging out with veterans. And he says, it's gone. It's completely gone. What happened? I said, you got it done. So there's a broad application, specific phobias. There's a lot of application to the model and people whose lives we can touch.
Yeah, that's what I love about this. And I just want to make sure to emphasize that. So, I think, and especially in the veteran world, me being a veteran as well, we kind of discount our own needs for something like this because we're always thinking of the other veterans, right? We're always thinking, oh, well, I didn't get blown up in combat or, I didn't experience military sexual trauma or, I wasn't molested as a kid, I didn't get beat by my dad. So this isn't something I'll just let somebody else take that space. Right. But no, this is for everyone. And I especially say, like, if you just feel in general just stuck, like you feel like you just can't make any forward progress in a certain area of your life, you're getting in your own way, you're getting in your own way. This is a really good technique to use for that.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's so spot on. We'll talk to veterans, and one says, well, I never deployed. Someone else, probably needs this. Give them my spot. And someone else says, well, I deployed, but I wasn't actually in combat, so give them my spot. And and it's like, no, like, you're getting a spot, because this will change your life. And it's not only for those sort of things like PTS and guilt and all those sorts of things, but it's also could be used for leveling up as you move into the future. There's processes that we refer to as installation, and it's basically getting the brain optimized, future pacing for something that someone is likely to encounter in the future that they haven't encountered yet, and getting it such that their brain will respond in an optimal way when that situation shows up. So there's really lots and lots of application to make life so much more satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, because don't we all deserve that as human beings? And especially veterans, because I think veterans, we kind of get to this place of, okay, like that veteran you talked about. Well, I'm just accepting that I'll never be, below a 5 with my pain, and it's just something we just get in this headspace of just accepting the minimal, right? And it's like, okay, well, I'll just have to be good with that. But don't we deserve better, right? Don't we deserve optimal, not minimal? Right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm so passionate about this it's change, it's paradigm changing. And so the notion that, I'm stuck with this, or it's going to be long and hard, or it's going to be painful, or I'm going to have to talk about every detail about everything that happened. These are antiquated notions. Our understanding of the brain has evolved, and so too with it now has intervention. And this is why I'm so passionate about getting this word out there, because you don't have to suffer. Like, you can get better, like, really quickly, and go on and just live the rest of your life in an optimal way.
Yeah, amazing. So you provide this training to people to learn how to do the Cortina method. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the vision here is to create an army of healers who's going to heal, inspire, and invigorate 1 million people with unparalleled outcomes and optimal guest service. So to do that, that's a little behind the scenes on the name, by the way. So the Cortina method, it was my way of doubling down on ensuring that I'm giving the trainees everything I got. Whatever questions they have, whatever's going to increase competencies and skill acquisition, I want to give it away at these trainings. I want to be available to make that happen. My name's on the thing. So that's a little behind the scenes on the name. It was just a way for me to really double down on making sure I'm turning out highly trained, competent practitioners. And if there's questions after the training, I'll be available for them. So the it's very intensive. It starts off with an in-person 3-day masterclass training for at least a good 25 hours over 3 days. And then it continues over the period of the next year with ongoing training. So there's videos that are hosted up on a platform. So it's convenient morning, noon, and night for anybody's schedule. Whenever they'd like to watch the video, they can. And there's training modules that basically go over the steps in the protocol. In addition to that, there's group Zoom cohort calls where we get on and it's just pure consultation. Whatever I tell people that call will last as long or as short as there's questions. I'll be on that thing for 3 hours if I have to. As long as the trainees have a question, I'm committed to giving them an answer. And so it's pure consultative and Q&A so that they get their needs met. At the end of any sort of training process, but what I'm acutely aware of is at the end of what we're doing, the end user is a living, breathing human who is suffering, who's in pain. And so that's always foremost on my mind in terms of making sure that people have the skills and the competencies that they need, because when they go out there, that's the end user. That's going to be the recipient of their training. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. No, and the links to Michael's website to learn more about that and to OWR will be in the show notes, so you have those references. And that the online training is excellent. I mean, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, it's nice to, you go through it and it's pretty intense, and some of these concepts are pretty new, so it's nice to kind of get a little bit of a refresher, because it's like, whoa, it's like drinking from a fire hose, so like you need to hear it again and see it again, and it really emphasizes the learning. So I feel like I'm learning even more, diving into the online training, so it's very valuable. Thank you.
My pleasure. Excellent. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. So are there any last points about the Cortina method that you feel like you need to let people know about before we close the session?
Yeah, what I would say is if you're somebody who is struggling with something, and this sounds, because I'll just put it right out there. I've heard this plenty of times too. Well, it sounds too good to be true. It sounds, we're so used to hearing no pain, no gain. Maybe that has application in some areas of life. It does not here. And so my message to those who are thinking, well, it sounds too good to be true, I don't know about this, I've always heard therapy has to take a long, long time. The question I suggest you pose to yourself is, what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? Try it. Your worst case scenario is it doesn't work. We're seeing effectiveness rates, by the way, of about 90%. So to me, that tells me two things. One, full transparency. It's not 100%. Nothing is. Anyone ever tells you something's 100%, watch out anyway. The second thing it tells me is that it has a higher effectiveness rate than anything I've ever seen, studied, or practiced in this field. So what have you got to lose? The worst case scenario is things stay the same. Nobody has ever gotten worse from this. And the message that I would leave to practitioners out there who are interested in being a healing force and transforming lives, and who might be struggling with some of the same thought, like, well, this sounds way different, I don't know, it sounds too good to be true. What I would suggest to you is look into it, check it out. If you go onto my website, you'll see brain mapping. We actually have hard data evidence showing before treatment and after treatment, and brain maps by an independent doctor. Doesn't work for me, I don't work for him, it's an independent doctor. They get their brain mapped. You see how the brain is functioning at baseline, at trauma recall. Then they come in for the treatment, TCM, and then they go back and get the brain mapping done, in dramatic differences. So there's hard data and evidence supporting this, and check it out. Once more, what's the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't resonate with you and you go back to practicing whatever it was you were practicing. I could tell you that almost never happens. People really get intrigued by this, and it's very compelling when you're seeing live demonstrations and video demonstrations at the effectiveness of this. But your worst case scenario is whatever, you go back to whatever you were doing, but there's so much upside potential. That's what I would share.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely transform the way you approach your clients, and just, hey, I mean, at like worst case scenario, you actually learned a bit about the brain and how it works, and shouldn't we know about those things since we are mental health practitioners? So, it's, it's been a valuable tool for me for sure in my practice. And, I'm still doing traditional therapy practices, but, I feel like this is my like sniper rifle, right? So like, I'm like, ooh, this person, is I'm meeting with somebody. I'm like, ooh, this person really could use this. And so then that's when I can kind of set that up and do that. And then, wow, it's like, we just saved ourselves 6 months, like in just that one next session that we do. So not that I couldn't continue to work with them, for some we still do, now we're working on optimizing, right? That's because we don't want to do minimal. We want to optimize and take advantage, because my idea is, okay, maybe you've been stuck for a very long time, in just this kind of trauma loop, or getting in your own way, or whatever it may be. And, maybe there's decades of things that you maybe missed opportunities with because you were being held back by this issue. And now that we've resolved this issue, wow, we can make up for lost time like really quickly. So that's what I focus on with those clients is yeah, okay, we've resolved this. We moved that big, huge boulder that was in here that you pushing against, and, and you couldn't move it. We moved it. And now it's like, now we can start running and really make up for the things that you feel like you missed out on in the last like decades.
Without a doubt. And I'll hear that from therapists who refer to me. They'll say that therapy after they've come in for TCM has become so much more productive, because now this thing's not in the way. And now they can talk about whether it's a relationship issue, work-related things, what have you, whatever it is, that becomes so much more productive because the big obstacle has been removed. And so, again, anybody, whether you're somebody who can benefit from receiving this or someone who's interested in learning how to facilitate this, here's what I would say. They say that trauma and PTS is relentless. Well, I can tell you, so are we, and we're going to get it. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a good mic drop. Boom. End the podcast. Stop recording. Thank you, Michael, so much for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast and letting us know about this amazing short-term trauma resolution approach, the Cortina Method, and all the links to find out more about this will be in the show notes. Hey guys, thanks so much again for joining us on another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and leave us a review while you're there. And if you screenshot your review, email it to info@fireteamwhiskey.com with your name and address. You'll be entered into our drawing for a prize for just leaving us a review. So let us know what we're doing great, what you'd like to hear more about, and please go ahead and just give us a follow and give us a honest review, especially on iTunes, because that helps us reach other military members, veterans, and first responders with this vitally important information about how to improve their health, fitness, and wellness. We will see you at the next episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I am your podcast host, former Army Captain Steph Lincoln, founder of Fire Team Whiskey. When you look good, you feel good. Guys, it's about time you threw away those stained t-shirts and those baggy, saggy shorts and upgrade your gym swagger. Zaya Active is the official workout wear of Fire Team Whiskey. Go to bit.ly/Zaya FTW and check out all the styles for women, men, and kids.